Please welcome to the stage founder and managing director of RevTech Labs, Dan Roselli.
All right, well, thanks everybody. I know we have a few people still coming in from the other stage in the expo floor. I think we've seen it all today, from comedy at lunch to a payments panel. I'm really excited about this next conversation with Bill Rogers, the CEO of Truist. If you please help me welcome him to the stage. All right, well, I've been looking forward to this.
We have to figure out how to sit in these chairs first. That's the
Oh yeah, it's a little trick. We probably should have practiced that. But you get the two views. You can look out and you can also look at each other. I've been looking forward to this conversation ever since we did our prep call a number of weeks ago. One of the realities we have is that in our world today, there's lots of significant issues, right? Huge economic concerns, from inflation to stock prices, the war in Ukraine, COVID, social issues in the US, probably more than we could count or have time to count, right? And it's interesting because we talked about having you here. We're not going to talk about real-time payments or things of that nature, but we're going to talk about leadership.
Yep.
And in particular, principle-based leadership, because I know it's a passion of yours through what I've read about you and having seen some of the things you speak on. Why, especially with what's going on in the world, why is principle-based leadership so important to you personally? And does it apply to some of the challenges we're facing in the world and how you practice leadership?
Yeah, so I think of it as, and label as deep purpose leadership. Mm-hmm. And the fact is it always applies. So there's never a time, in fairness, when it doesn't apply.
Yeah.
And when it applies most is when everything around you is changing at speeds and complexities and things that nobody's ever encountered. I'm sure every generation always says, well, this is the most change ever, right? So I'm sure that's, but you know what, for this generation, it, really
it might be true.
And it might really be true. And to be able to have a North Star component of purpose, and we can talk about sort of that concept, that's most important when the seas are really, really choppy. It's just to know where you're going, why you're going there, what's your actual purpose every day, how does your personal purpose connect with the company's purpose, what you're here to do every day, why is it important, why does it matter. Mm-hmm. That's about the only way I can see that you can sort of tune out or tune down maybe all the extraneous stuff that's around. And I think it applies for big companies, small companies, entrepreneurs. I think it's universally applied.
Talk a little bit about purpose-driven leadership for you.
Right.
What is your purpose? How does that help you weather the storms?
Yeah, so we ask we've got 52,000 teammates, and we ask them all to talk about their personal purpose. And we don't force you to talk about it, but we ask you to inspect and develop your own personal purpose and find a way to articulate, whether you do that publicly, whether you do it privately. Yeah. But find it, find your place, find your equilibrium point, find where your feet, are firmly planted in the ground. And then we ask to match that with the company's purpose. Our company's purpose is to inspire and build better lives and communities. Mm-hmm. All those words are extremely, extremely intentional. From inspire, means to lead, means to be first. Better lives is what we do every day, try to create better lives for individuals and better lives and better communities. So those are really, really important words for us. We dissect them, we can talk all about that. And then we talk about somebody's personal purpose. And we ask everybody to talk about it. My personal purpose, I try to make things easy. So I think, and I'll talk about that later, I think that's a leadership principle. I think as leaders, our job is to make things easy, not hard. Sometimes we stand up and talk about some complicated topics and things, and people don't want to hear about that. They want to hear that it's make it easy for me to understand, make it easy for me to implement, make it easy for me to execute. So mine is take care of my corner. And sort of it's a simple concept, and your corner can be anything. And I've had this, my wife and I sort of had the same purpose, and it can apply forever. My corner was small early in my career. It might have been just my family, might have been the unit that I managed, might have been the church that I went to, might have been the neighborhood that I was in. You could define it a lot of different ways. And take care of the corner is the corner better because I was there? You know, did I have a positive influence in some way? So is the corner improved? And it could be improved dramatically, it could be improved slightly, but was my presence meaningful and did it make a difference? And today, and you know, during my career, that corner's obviously expanded. My today corner's pretty big.
Yeah.
But it's the same principle. Is it better because I'm there? Am I making a positive influence? Am I making my corner better? And then for me, you know, making your corner better, taking care of your corner, and inspiring and building better lives and communities, that Venn diagram overlaps.
Yeah, certainly.
And for almost all teammates, if it doesn't overlap at all, you probably ought to be thinking, is this the right company or are you the right person, in fairness? That's probably worth considering. But it always overlaps in some way. Sometimes the Venn diagram's right on top of each other. Sometimes it just connects at a certain point. But when it connects, that's when the flywheel starts spinning. That's when the magic happens. That's when the energy's created.
Yeah.
Is when someone can say, gosh, my personal purpose, what I'm here to do, aligns with what I do every day at work.
Yeah.
Well, that's
powerful.
That's really, really powerful and meaningful.
It's interesting. I think we work a lot with entrepreneurs in the fintech and insurtech space.
Right.
And founders talk about this all the time, which is you have to have a mission, a purpose for the company. That's what attracts people and the passion for that. It's interesting to hear you talk about that as I'll call it a big company executive too, right? The principle's the same.
100%. I mean, I think, one, people want to work for companies that stand for something. They want to do business with companies that stand for something. They stay with companies longer if they're connected in a certain way. They do business, and their retention from a client perspective is longer if they find that connection point. And I think it does, and you use the word synonymously, and I might take a little exception to that.
Yeah.
I think the mission is one thing, and the purpose can be another.
Clarify that a little.
Because the mission can get a little bit into the what, it can get a little bit into the what, it can get a little bit into the how, and the purpose is the why. You know, why are we here? Why are we doing this? What's really important? What are the core components of that? And I think sometimes companies get lost in, thinking purpose is a marketing thing or a slogan or whatever, but it has to be fundamentally why we're here, why we do business, why is this, what is what I do every day, why does it matter?
Yeah, it has to be true in your core. You can't fake it.
You cannot fake it, and those who try to fake it, teammates, we refer to employees as teammates, clients, communities, they're really smart.
Yeah.
I mean, they can see through it in a second.
Yeah, I think that authenticity comes through, right?
Right.
So clearly you're passionate about this personally.
Yeah.
Where did purpose-driven leadership first come into your life? Was it a conversation with a mentor? Was it something you read? And what sparked that?
Probably always as a career, the business that I was in, I've been in the banking business. I've actually been with Truist my entire career. Don't anybody be surprised. You can actually do that. You can have 7 or 8 careers and be at one company. It's totally possible. But I think the work that I did was always purposeful. I enjoyed the work I did. I enjoyed, helping companies grow. Most of mine was in investment banking and corporate investment banking, and so helping companies grow and helping companies flourish and helping them achieve their objectives. So I think it was always purposeful. And then I did things separately, in the community and things that I was involved in. But it probably wasn't until the last 15 years that I started using the words and reading thinking about the terms. How do you bring all this together? It was in my makeup, but I started bringing it together probably in the last 15 years and talking about it from a purpose perspective and finding ways to make the connection points of all the things that I do and how do they come together. So it's been a passion probably my whole life, but more defined in the last 15 years.
Yeah, and as you were obviously bringing organizations together, talk about how purpose-driven leadership helped that, because that's just a massive undertaking.
Well, in fairness, I think we'd like to be able to say that we were the first large-scale merger built on purpose. I mean, the foundation was actually purpose. We knew that it would be a financially compelling merger. I mean, just all the reasons, all the things, we knew that would be the case. But the reason we came together is because we were both purpose-led companies, so we had this foundation. And we had this concept when we started talking about the merger. We said, well, what could we stand for that would be better? how would it be more important than just merging? How does it be more, what can we do for communities? What can we do for teammates? So foundationally, it was built on purpose. I mean, the long cement poles in the structure are purpose oriented. And I think that was the incredible foundation. I mean, we've done the largest bank merger in the last 15 years, probably the largest merger of equals ever.
Yep.
Certainly in financial services, and did it during a pandemic.
No big challenge there.
No challenge. But we made a decision because it was purpose founded that the first thing we would do would go out and talk about purpose. We would talk about our purpose, mission, and values. And so we went on a proverbial roadshow, probably touched 30,000 teammates. We started in December, literally the day the merger was consummated. We started on the road. And literally as we walked sort of off the last stage, the pandemic hit. So whether that was serendipity or great planning, I don't know, and I don't know that
Take the great planning.
I don't know that it matters, but it was foundational that we said we want to start there. We didn't talk about cost saves. We didn't talk about revenue synergies. All we talked about was purpose, mission, and values, and how do we come together as a team, and that these will be the core things that we live by as we build this company together.
Yeah, a follow-up question to that, and this may be an obvious one, but having seen a lot of mergers, not only in financial services but others, where cultures collide and it's just a mess, did that common purpose, do you think that was part of the success?
We did a lot of work ahead of time. I spent a lot of time with our board. I spent a lot of time with CEOs that I knew that were on boards of companies that merged and did mergers. We could talk with a lot of merged companies, read a lot. As you read a merger of equals book and it has 10 chapters, 9 of them might be failures. So you have to sort of know going in that this is really hard work.
Yeah.
And the primary thing that came up, I mean, universally was one culture. And you have to make that decision right out of the chute. You can choose one or the other, or you can create one, but you have to be clear with everyone that we're going to be one culture. We're not going to debate this. We're not going to have two camps. We're not going to have division. We're going to have one culture. And since we came from a common purpose, the work that we did pre-merger to get ready, it was sort of easy lifting.
Yeah.
I mean, because everyone spoke a language that was similar. We had an intent to want to create a purpose together. The most fun was to watch, Heritage executive fight for the words from the other company and, back and forth, which was sort of a fun process. And when Kelly King and I put this together, when we walked out of that meeting, as we were preparing for the merger, we looked at each other and said, this is going to work.
Yeah.
Just watching how teammates interacted, watching how the leaders interacted, never worked together in their lives. So Kelly and I worked a little bit. They'd never worked together in their lives. And watching them as a common bond around purpose. The other stuff is harder.
Yeah.
There's no doubt, we got to choose, we got to pick one, got to pick the other, we got to pick the best of both. But that work was a confirmation that we were gonna be on the right track.
Yeah, it is interesting from the outside, seeing what you were all able to do and make it look so easy. I'm sure it was not. Is really something to be proud of. So congratulations on that, because you made it look like it was done the right way. I think it feels that way.
Well, I appreciate that, and making it look easy is different than being easy.
Indeed it is.
But thank you.
Let me shift gears a little bit, because we talked also that certainly being a great bank, a great financial institution, a great partner for your clients is what you're interested in. But in your readings and the things I've read about you, that's not enough.
Right.
You want to be a great company. You want to be a great community member. Talk a little bit about how you view that purpose-driven, beyond financial services, as you as a corporate entity, in terms of what your leaders do in the community. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's linked. I mean, sometimes we talk about purpose being only what we do in the community, and I think purpose in the community is actually just a manifestation of the work that we do every day. So they're not separate things, and that's actually important for our teammates to sort of get grounded. The work you do every day is the purpose. How we show the community that is the work that we do in the community. And for us, one of the key words in our purpose statement was inspire. And as the pandemic hit, a couple of examples is we said, okay, wait a minute, we have a opportunity and an obligation as a emerging company to play a role. So we're now on the biggest stage in the world. We're merging these two companies. We've made this bold statement about what we want to do, and we want to be inspirational. What are the things that do that? And it forced us to think completely differently. We did literally within 24 hours, sort of after we were underway in the pandemic, we committed to put $50 million to work in our communities. And we said, we're not exactly sure what that is, where it should go. We're not sure what the infrastructure is. But if we're going to use that word inspire, will that inspire others? Will that inspire others to say, wait a minute, we actually just need to get in front of this. We need to do these core service levels, worked with a variety of organizations, used our model to implement that. We made the same decision on the payment protection plan. And we said, okay, if we're going to play a role, the most important thing small businesses need right now is some help. And we have this program changed 50 times during its implementation. I mean, the most complex thing you've ever seen. We took 5,000 people out of the work they were doing in merging and said, okay, actually just stop. We're actually going to go do this now because this is purpose. Our merger will wait. We'll get our merger done. We'll get the technology. We'll get the platforms put together. But we have a once in a lifetime opportunity here. And if we're going to be purpose driven, we should lead. So in almost all of our markets, we were the #1 provider and for our teams, it wasn't about making loans, it was about saving 3 million jobs. Yeah. And that's the way we talked about it. This is not, our job's not, they're working 24 hours, literally 24 hours a day. They all have these great bonds of, the 3 o'clock conversation, the one loan we got over the transom and the difference that it made, the restaurant that it saved or the, small business that it saved. But most importantly, they talk about the jobs. Yeah. We saved 3 million jobs. Not we made $17 billion worth of loans. That's interesting. Yeah. We saved 3 million jobs.
Yeah. It's interesting, when we were talking to our founders during the same time, we talked to them that disruption causes opportunity.
No doubt.
And it's just interesting hearing you describe, because what you just said could have been in a conversation with an entrepreneur with 10 people in the company, right? That ability to react
100%.
And lead in times of crisis. It's really interesting to see the connection correlation. Let's talk about some of the challenges, because purpose-driven leadership is not all roses.
No, it's not.
For you personally, what's been the biggest challenge? And then from a corporate standpoint, what's been the biggest challenge of getting the organization to try and live this?
Yeah, for me personally, it's trying to, balance the demands of the merger itself. So the complexity of the merger, the daily decisions that have to be made, the monitoring, the testing, the reporting, the relationships with our board, our regulators, all of our constituents, our clients, anticipating all those needs. And then sometimes making decisions in a vacuum. So we were creating things. We did a lot of things that didn't exist. We have dozens and dozens of patents that come out of this merger because we were creating things as we go along. The challenge was don't forget the why. So as you're
so much going on.
As you're doing the work, if you don't take a chance to pull up and say, okay, why are we doing this again? Let's make sure we get reoriented. And so, I just had to pull back days and say, okay, I'm going to actually spend time and we're going to just talk about purpose. We start every meeting at our company we start with a purpose moment. So let's talk about a purpose moment, or let's talk about a moment of gratitude. Just to sort of get reoriented and say why because we're going to get into some tough stuff.
Yeah, right. Let's all remember why we're here and why we're committed to
dialogue. So personally, it was hard to make sure we got oriented, and similarly with the company is to make sure that we constantly were reinforcing the why, because the actual work itself, and then the work itself under the duress of social unrest, under the duress of a pandemic was just, a further compounding effect.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned weathering the storm earlier, and I will sometimes talk about purpose-driven leadership as a lighthouse, right? And it's even more important. You build it when it's calm, to use it when it's really, really rough out there and you're getting battered about it. So it's interesting to see you talk in similar language.
Yeah, and I think about it as a buoy.
Yeah.
You know, that's all the way grounded. The purpose is the grounding in the bottom of the shore, and then the buoy itself is always going to be doing this, but you have to just be grounded in the bottom, you know, to know why you're there.
Yeah. So you mentioned starting all the meetings with a purpose-driven moment. How do you know as an individual if you feel like you're drifting from purpose? Do you just get it instinctively? Do you just feel like you're moving too fast? What's the trigger for you? Said, I need to take a breath in a moment and reground myself.
Yeah, well, personally you need to do it, and then corporately, we just have to stop and say, is this a purposeful decision we're making? We literally this morning, we were talking about something, and finally I just said, okay, that's time out. Had enough conversation, really enjoyed it. It's been really fruitful, and we're going to move forward with this because this is important to the purpose of the company.
Yeah.
I don't know what its profitability will be. I don't know what its return will be. That's a good debate. We'll continue to have it. We'll be rigorous in all of that, but we are moving forward because it is a strong representation of the purpose of our company. And so those are the times you just have to pull back and say, we're
going this way.
We're going this way.
One of the things we talked about, there's an organization, if you don't know, out there called the Business Roundtable, and about 3-4 years ago had this discussion about stakeholder value along with shareholder value. Certainly we have obligations to return value for our investors and our shareholders, but there are other stakeholders in what we do, and I think it was 150, 200 CEOs signed up with that, of which Truist is a member. Is that a good representation of what you're talking about in a broader sense, and do you see more companies and more industries moving in this direction? Do you think they see what you see?
The irony is I'm leaving here to go to a business roundtable meeting. So it's funny
that was not a plan.
You brought it up, exactly, so where I'm going right from here. Yeah, I think it was an important statement, and in that case, I would call it maybe not quite deep purpose, but very wide purpose, to acknowledge that there are lots of stakeholders, not only just shareholders. You know, so there's stakeholders that are clients, there's stakeholders that are teammates and employees, and there's stakeholders that are the community, there's stakeholders that are our shareholders and they think differently, and there's stakeholders that are part of a bigger planet. And let's recognize that they all play a role and how we think about the returns and how we focus on our companies. And I think that was an important statement to make on behalf of the business community.
Yeah, you mentioned the purpose that you have for the organization. Do you go and think about stakeholder groups, and does the purpose connect, or how does the purpose connect to different groups?
100%, yeah. And I think that's the grounding is, and it does connect at each point. And we have those conversations. We start our conversation with our regulators on purpose. We start our conversation with our shareholders on purpose. I mean, if you look at, you know, every investor presentation we made from the first one we made as a company, the first page was purpose. We did talk about all the financial results. We did talk about cost saves. We did talk about all the benefits, but we always started and always start with that first concept of purpose. And by the way, I'm saying all this like, you know, we figured it all out. I mean, I literally feel, and I've been deep in this mind now for, you know, almost 2 decades, that I'm rounding first base in a baseball, just in terms of my personal, you know, understanding, adoption, and trying to provide followership and leadership.
Yeah. Do you ever get pushback on that? Do you ever get people look at you and say, hey, you're a banker, it's about the numbers, come on.
Oh yeah. You know, we have a lot of cynical people in the world. And you know, I think it's a little bit of a source of pride actually when people say, oh, you know, Bill, here comes that purpose thing. Why don't you get that out of the way so we can move on to the real stuff? They're acknowledging that it's coming.
Right.
So they're acknowledging that it's going to be part of it. You know, that's the first step.
Yeah.
You know, is having that first dialogue. But yeah, I would say yes, there are some, and in fairness, you know, purpose and performance are inextricably linked.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the part we talk about internally. They're not two separate things. Performance fuels purpose, purpose fuels performance. That link continues to grind. You can't continue to perpetuate your purpose. If you don't perform really well, you can't perform well in my mind unless you have a good purpose grounding and focus. So I think they're linked. And when you make that link for people, I think the cynicism starts to wear away a little bit. So, oh yeah, maybe that's right.
It's interesting. We haven't talked yet a lot about the theme of this conference being recharge.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of the sessions we've talked about is how do you, because we're running marathons, right? We're not running sprints.
Right.
And purpose can be such a great re-energizer, recharger for people. Do you think that helps your team?
100%. And I was really thinking a lot about it when we talked earlier and looking at the agenda and thinking about this concept of recharge. And recharge has to happen all during the day.
Right.
You know, we all have to recharge all during the day. And for me, the recharge is purpose, is to, you know, I'll even look at my calendar, and if I'm thinking, okay, I manage my calendar around where I spend time, well, you know, am I with the right constituents? But I also manage it around, am I doing purposeful work? Am I actually focused on things that are purposeful? So it's always a chance for me to reorient and recharge.
Yeah. Well, I would be remiss, since we're sitting here on the Truist stage and you're one of the title sponsors of the event, I think Truist's purpose and how it manifests in the community in support of organizations like this and conferences like this wouldn't be happening. This conversation wouldn't be happening without that. So thank you for the continued support from the company. And
well, thanks. And I think this is a good also representation of you know, being able to support what we're doing here and being able to support it in Charlotte in this community. And then having these conversations and having it on, I'll call it our stage.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Which is
literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about innovation earlier when you were talking about the merger and having to create new processes and the patents that go with that.
Right.
We were talking before we got on stage about the Truist Innovation Center, which is opening just about now. That's also something that people could have said, boy, this is a low priority during a merger, right? But it wasn't for you. You announced it and talking about innovation in the original announcement of the merger. Why? Talk about why innovation was so important to the purpose.
Yeah, you know, part of the premise of coming together on a purpose basis, but we also came together because we were willing to talk about disruption and willing to talk about disrupting ourselves. You know, so if we look back on our things that we talked about, we always talked about you have to be in a constant state of disruption. And disruption and innovation to me is are synonyms. I mean, there's a synonym. You just keep using those together. So if you're continuing to disrupt yourself, you're continuing to innovate, you're continuing to move forward. So that was a foundational element. And then we talked about the concept of a merger that does create cost saves from its concept of being able to do one thing over a larger scale. And then what you do with that is critical. And one of the things we said we wanted to do is increase our level of investment and innovation as a total concept. And we had this opportunity to do this, you know, just this physical manifestation here in Charlotte, which has been fantastic. We were able to get a great building that had an incredible space. I mean,
I've been there, it's beautiful.
Incredible space. And when we walked in, we, you know, sort of eyes like, you know, got big as saucers, so okay, this is it. And being able to put the innovation center in the heart of the company, I didn't understand how important that would be. You know, oftentimes the innovation center is somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, it's
almost purposely outside the organization, so not to get contaminated.
For culturally, yeah. So don't get contaminated. You know, with the guys with the suits. You know.
You didn't wear a tie today, by the way. I'm very impressed. I love that.
I know. So don't. You know, trust me, I've got one in my briefcase. But to be able to put it together at the heart, I think is really been valuable. And you know, so we can interact at all times. We can involve more people in the process. We actually, and I say we, the team who created it, you know, we actually also have a call center in the innovation center. So if we're ever really thinking we're losing our way on what clients are really thinking, you know, we can walk in there and put the headphones on and we listen. Yeah. And you can spend an hour in there listening to go, these are the challenges, these are the problems they're having. This is how our teammates are solving those. How do we help them? What do we create to, you know, help solve this problem? So that was the physical manifestation, but it's also just a philosophy. And as we came together and decided we wanted to do a real merger of equals, we wanted to do a best of both, that required a lot of innovation. So innovation is something that's happening every day. It's happening all across the company. This is just one of the places that's the physical manifestation.
Yeah, it's one of the advantages of having it at the heart, right?
Yeah.
It's not just that, it literally permeates.
It is, and yeah, we do lots of things in that. We have innovators in residence. We want to have people there. We want to find a way to have a community benefit. We've been working with all the local colleges and universities. And how do we work together? This is a community asset. How do we make this come together so everyone can see the benefit?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about what you've added and where you started. Are there things that need to be jettisoned or stripped away from the company or thinking in order for purpose-driven leadership to work? The things you need to stop doing?
Yeah, you do have to go through and look at the businesses that you're in and the ways that you execute those businesses, and then you have to determine, where the purpose fits. A great example: we're one of the few banks that has a subprime auto business, and you can say, well, gosh, is that consistent with purpose? And that was part of another heritage company. I said, well, I'd love to go spend some time with them. The leaders in that organization are so purpose-driven. Our job is to help someone get their first car to drive to their first job, so they can get a paycheck.
Again, it's not about the loan.
Our job's to do great counseling. Our job's to keep people in that car. We provide financial. So it's not only the businesses that you're in or not in, but how do you execute those businesses, and are you executing them in a purposeful way, in a way that's meaningful and that makes a difference?
Yeah, it's interesting. You answered, kind of almost preempted one of the questions I was going to ask, which as a leader, how do you know when that purpose-driven view has permeated in the organization? Are there examples of it that you see and go, yes, we've got it? And I think that might have been one in that group.
It is. When leaders explain what they're doing from a context of purpose, when they explain who they hired from a context of purpose, when they explain the teamwork from a context of purpose, that's when you say, okay, we got it here. Or that leader has it, that we created the right culture.
Yeah.
We do a lot of things that are very intentional. I mentioned a few of those in terms of starting meetings. I mean, there's dozens of things we do that are very intentional. But the best work that comes out is organic. And I'll give you one example. When we were in the big conversions that you do over the 3-day weekends, you always close your branches because the system's down for, it's a 3-day weekend, the systems are down, so you always close your branches. That's what mergers have done since the beginning of time. And we're in one of those meetings, we're talking about that, and one of our teammates, 100% organic, raised her hand and said, if we're purpose-driven and our clients need us and they're worried, why are we closing our branches? It was just fantastic. It was the perfect, ground up, and everybody looked at each other, and the only answer was, that's because what everybody's done.
Yeah.
And that seemed like a pretty stupid answer. And then it was, well, what would be the purposeful thing to do? And we said, well, let's open our branches.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot of activity in branches. In fairness, I went to a lot of branches over the 2 pivotal weekends. But the esprit de corps and the teamwork and the pride of, hey, we're here. We're not hiding behind a closed door. The door's open. Even if you can't transact with us, we can help you. We can walk you to the ATM. We can talk about how we can do things digitally. We can talk about, when we open, this is going to happen. It was an incredible, purposeful moment and totally organic. Totally came from just somebody brave raising their hand and saying, why the heck are we doing this?
Yeah, that's great. I don't think you've been to Packard Place yet, the entrepreneurship center that we started. We actually have our purpose permanently laminated on the outside of the building. We literally stuck it there as a lighthouse for people to say, yeah, this community feels right or it doesn't. Do you think that happens at Truist as well, that people that are looking to come work and be part of the team, do you think they're assessing that purpose as part of, before they come on board?
100%.
Yeah.
And
even at 50,000 people?
And at every level. At every level. So, I'm generally more involved in recruiting sort of a lot of our senior exec, and purpose is 100% either the the first factor or the deciding factor. It's I came to interview, or I agreed to talk because of your purpose, and or I'm coming because of purpose. Everything else is interesting, you know, job's great, you pay me the right stuff, all that, but I'm gonna come because I believe I can do something that'll be important and it'll be aligned with my own purpose.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know we're almost out of time, so I'm going to kind of do a wrap-up question here.
Okay.
It's a little open-ended, but in terms of just broad advice, because we've talked a lot about leadership, you know, what's the best piece of career advice you've gotten? I'm curious to know, you know, who you got it from and why it stuck with you over the years. I love asking that to almost every leader I talk to, because I get such a wide variety of answers on that.
Well, I seek and need a lot of advice. So start with that as a premise. But I'd say the best broad advice I got when I first became a CEO, I went and talked to a lot of leaders, and I was selective. And what was fascinating is I would call and say, I'm getting ready to be a CEO. I'd love to come talk to you. And I would think, oh, we'll get with my assistant, and we'll get with you in a couple of weeks. Where it's like, you want to come over to the house tonight? I want to share some things with you. So that was a learning lesson. And by the way, that was a learning pass it on lesson. But I summarized a lot of those conversations into two sort of leadership principles that I live by. And one is to bring clarity from complexity. Our job as leaders is to make it clear. And to how we open this, there's so many things going on. Things are complicated almost by nature, and they're getting more. Our job is to make it clear. And then the second was to bring purpose to the work. Is to make the work meaningful. And so I sort of live by those principles, and that was the best sort of a consolidation of advice that I'd received.
And those interplay, right? The more you're focused on purpose, the clearer you can get rid of some of the distractions out there.
100%.
Wasn't it General Powell that said, great leaders are great simplifiers?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, of course, he would have said it better, which is logical. But I do think that's our job as leaders is to make it easy, not hard. I gave a speech one time and early in my career, and I talked about a complicated offense of what we were outlining. And I walked off the stage, and a teammate came up to ask me a question, and I'm sure she was going to tell me how great I was and how super my presentation was. And she said, which has just stuck with me forever, when you say it's complicated, imagine what it feels like to me. I thought, wow, that is very clarifying.
Yeah.
So I've never used the word complicated offense again. But it was clear to me that my job's not to actually talk about how good I am and how knowledgeable I am about how complicated this is, but let me make it actually really clear.
That's wonderful. Thank you again. Even the time you took with your team to speak here. Dante has spoken here before. Vinu is speaking here later. Truist and the executive team you put together really does walk the walk when it comes to supporting the community and engaging as seen by seeing your presence being here. So thank you very sincerely. It's been wonderful to chat. How about a huge round of applause for Bill Rogers?
Thank you.
Before I leave the stage, I think I have some housekeeping here, so I'm going to cover that really quickly. My apologies for making you stay for one second. And the massage chairs are now open, so if you want to get a massage,
wait a minute.
little back
I
rub,
didn't know that was an option.
Before you go off to the business roundtable. So they're out in the lobby. Up on this stage next is going to be the Buy Now, Pay Later Becomes Big Business with Lee Matthews from MasterCard, Greg Lloyd from EY. On the stage next door, on the Bright House stage, we'll be talking about collaboration. Can we still collaborate as human beings with Donna Turner and Matthew Powell? Also at 3 o'clock next door, there'll be that session on meditation. How do we, as we professionals, can weave meditation into what we do as a way of keeping ourselves recharged and renewed? And of course, then the happy hour tonight with the local band. So we got a lot of great stuff planned. So how about one more round of applause for Bill? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Loved it.